Welcome back to Say No to Lashon Hara, day 38. This entire series is being done as a refuah shlema for Chana bat Sima Fega. One of the most obvious ideas that surrounds the concept of Lashon Hara is that words can cause damage. So people are aware that the reason why Lashon Hara is so terrible is because of the damage that it can do to people. It can stop people from getting jobs, from finding prospective life partners, from having people invest in their business, from accepting their children to schools. The possibilities are endless. Once the rumors start, they have a way of spreading all on their own. So we think that Lashon Hara is forbidden because of the damage it will cause to the person. However, whether or not any damage seems to occur from those words, the Isur, the prohibition against Lashon Hara, is still very much in place, even if zero harm comes from our words. Just the fact that you looked at someone in a negative way, told over something which was negative about them, and released that information into the world means that you've spoken Lashon Hara. Whether or not something bad comes from it is not really the point, even though that's why it's so sinister. And part of the reason for that is because we can never really know if damage was actually done. It might very well be that in the immediate aftermath of this conversation around the table, nothing really happened. However, someone might say something super innocent. Just as an example, there was a teacher in school, and that teacher left in the middle of the school year. One person says at the table, "That's weird. Teachers don't usually leave in the middle of the school year. There must have been something that was worth firing this teacher over." Next person says, "Well, they don't usually fire teachers over random small things. If they fire them in the middle of the year, it must be that they did something really inappropriate." Next thing you know, people are imagining and conjuring up all sorts of horrible things that this teacher must have done in order to be able to get dismissed in the middle of the year. The irony is, none of those reasons were true. Not the first, second, third, or fourth. Not only that, it carries on, because then everyone gets up from the table having heard 4 half-baked reasons why that teacher was dismissed in the middle of the school year. And then they go somewhere else and someone says, "Did you hear what happened with that teacher in school?" "Yep, they were cut middle of the school year." And the person said, "Well, I heard." And then they relate over a few of the ideas that they heard at the table, not as opinions or suggestions, but actually as matters of fact. As that gets passed around the table, other people are liable to add or cream up exactly what's been said in another way. And then as that spreads, more and more pieces get tacked on as fact that is indisputable about the story. Meanwhile, turns out the reason why the teacher didn't show up halfway through the year, unfortunately, their father or mother was unwell in Israel. They needed to go back to take care of their father or mother. Something that could have been a positive about a teacher, how dedicated they were to their parents, which would have made people want to suggest their daughter or their cousin to be able to go out on a date with this guy. What a sweet, caring, sensitive teacher this is. Instead, wound up getting accused of the most vile atrocities that a teacher can find themselves accused of. My friends, the words of Lashon Hara, they have a very long life. And that long life, sometimes even years and years later, can kind of wake up and cause damage that you don't know. So the truth is, Lashon Hara is not about the damage it causes. But the truth of that truth is that even when you don't see it cause damage here, almost always it will cause damage somewhere down the line. People don't have negative information in their heads that they tend to keep to themselves. Usually, that negative information finds a way of bubbling to the surface, across our lips, and into the ears of someone who we thought was unconnected, but finds themselves through the course of nature, to actually be interacting with this person. And a resume comes across their desk, and the question gets presented to them: should we hire this person as a teacher in our school 20 years later? Well, I remember back in the day, they were cut for the worst of reasons. Do you remember that? Or has the Chinese whispers and the broken telephone of information that gets passed around wound up leaving an imprint that you think is true in your brain, bringing damage to that person so many years later?